Hello and welcome back to the channel. It is Mark from PowerSonic and Apprentice 1-to-1. Before we get into today's video, I have an exciting announcement I want to share with all of you, and it's to do with Apprentice 1-to-1. We have won an award. It's something I'm really proud of, and I think the wider community of people involved with Apprentice 1-to-1 should be really proud as well. We've won an award for the Training and Professional Development Support category at the Electrical Industry Awards. It's a pretty big deal, I think. I'm really proud of it. The past winners are an esteemed group of people. It's in its 30th year now, I think, and the quality of the other candidates within that category was really high. So for us to come out as winners, yeah, I'm absolutely trimmed. Thank you to the judges for picking us, first and foremost, I guess, and thank you to everybody who has supported and received support from Apprentice 1-to-1 over the last 2.5 years now. None of it would have happened without all of you, and there's been individuals along the way who've made some staggering things happen, and I say that not to be boastful. It's been staggering to observe, and I go back to Eddie Clemens and his MFT that he donated in that then spilled into all these other donations that came afterwards. The guys Rick, Neil and Sam right at the start who helped me share this far and wide using their social media reach. And the podcast, of course, you know, they really helped me push that along and continue to do so today. They're good friends, both privately and in the trade, so it's really nice to still have their support, having had to listen to me banging on about this now for 2.5 years. And more recently, Craig and Jamie on the Apprentice 1-to-1 podcast with their support. I bounce ideas onto these people all the time still today, and I take their constructive criticism and unwavering support in good faith at all times. You know, they've always pushed me along, but always with some honest feedback, and that's what you need. But yeah, just a huge thank you to all of the individuals who've donated equipment and funds. So there's been an exchange most recently, you'll have seen it building up in the last few weeks, where we've had another drive of funds coming in from private individuals to pass on to apprentices, same with tools from big manufacturers and things like that. And now we're looking at this development of the training space that we're putting into place to hopefully try and support learners directly and in person rather than through the means of the internet. That's still in development. It's a slow and laborious process. I'm not going to pretend it's anything other than that, but we are getting there, and hopefully very soon we can release that out to the masses, or the one or two who might want to come along and take advantage of it and try and help those learners again in their learning journeys. So one of the key things that the judging panel picked out for us was our support of learners who had lost their employment and thus college places, to get them replaced with a work position and back into a college or retain their existing place within a college. And also some of the resources we've put out there through the podcast and other YouTube and social media activities to try and help support the industry. Yeah, I never expected we would anything like win. I'm amazed that we was even allowed to enter, to be honest. And yeah, just well done to everybody. Huge thanks again for all of the support, especially the guys in my close network. You know, I wouldn't have pushed this as far as I have today without their support and guidance. And that's one of the key principles of Apprentice 1-to-1, and I take that inspiration from that small network. It's all about guidance, support, kindness and respect. And I think if we all carry on in that aim, who knows where it'll end it up. Everything has a shelf life, that's for sure. Certainly with social media campaigns that build up, you know, they only last so long. You need to be realistic with these things. But I'm trying to now move Apprentice 1-to-1 into something that's maybe long lasting. We'll see. There are other industry developments coming with some of the bigger bodies out there who are looking at joining up employers and people seeking employment. I'm talking about TESP and NET and other organisations such as them, which are going to have a far more impactful benefit to the industry than I could ever achieve. So perhaps as time moves along, they'll take on that mantle of trying to help those people, and we can be there in the background doing our thing alongside them. Who knows? But for the time being, very well done. Massive thanks, and we'll move on with this video to look at some exciting electrical work, whatever that may be today. Enjoy. Today we're going to have a look at pricing. Now this is a topic that lots of people speak about. It's been discussed loads on social media. I'm not doing this to try and offer input as some sort of expert. It's just playing around with ideas that I thought might help other people, especially apprentices and retrainees who are perhaps looking towards working for themselves and understanding some of the costs that their boss might be faced with in providing them with paid employment, because it's not always as straightforward and simple as it might appear from the outside. You know, you can see a job that's been priced as 10 grand and it takes you 3 days or whatever, and you think you should be earning loads more money for it, it's not always that straightforward. There are loads of other factors in running a business that you might not have even thought about. So I'm putting this forward aimed mainly at people on retraining and apprenticeships, but it will also be hopefully helpful to electricians as well. I've certainly jogged my memory on a few things in trying to put this together, and again, in no way is this preaching or trying to say I know better than anyone else. There is loads more successful people in the electrical industry and business than I am. I've mentioned lots of them before. Stuart Stark, Russell Peel, Daniel Haley, Neil Bridgman, Craig Gallagher, just people in my social media network I can think of. There will be loads and loads of others. We're just a small firm, and these are some of the things that we take into account when we're pricing our jobs, and it might help some of you guys and girls in approaching the way you get to grips with your value in the marketplace. And it's different at varying stages, I might add, and we'll explain a little bit about that as we move through some of this information you have here. It's not a great long list. It is just an example of some of the things that you might build up into each of these subcategories, but it's really just emphasised the point that there are different factors at play when you come to determining what you want to charge your customers and how you want to run your business. And it is different. As I've said, if you're self-employed, you work for an agency, you run a limited company, however you're going about doing it, your overheads and the way you price work will be very different and unique to you. So there's no how-to guide for this. You'll see lots of the business coaches saying you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do the other. Lots of what you need to do you learn through experience, making your own mistake, seeing how other people approach and tackle things, and doing it in the way you want. For some people, that involves building a massive business, being really successful, having loads of profit, and all of the stress that comes with that, by the way. For others, it's keeping that to a simplistic level where you make the money you need with as little time spent doing it as possible to live the life that you want. And there's no right and wrong in any of that. It's just unique to our individual wants, needs, and circumstances. But we'll look at this, and you can see I've got the 3 categories. I've put that as other. Job costs and fixed costs. Now, there are proper accountancy terms for this, but I'm keeping this simple based on apprentices who might be following along, because I think those titles make more sense than your overheads and other such terminology that those clever accountants use, one of whom I'm married to, by the way, and she will tell me that I've got this absolutely wrong at many levels. So again, not an expert. But we'll start with the fixed costs. So I've put that down as kind of the things you have in your business that are unavoidable. It's the stuff that you need to be paying for day to day just to operate. And you'll run through these. So you've got employees, and that can be to do with wages, pension, sick pay, back office staff. And again, like I said, that varies based on the type of business you're running. So for us, we do have back office staff, we do have pension payments, we do have to provide sick and holiday pay for our employees. And if you are a one-person band working for yourself, running an electrical contracting business, the only real factor of any of that you might have relates to yourself. But don't forget yourself in that equation when you are putting these figures together at a business level. You're part of that team, you're an employee as well, and you want paying for your time. Make sure you get that into your fixed costs. There's also any office space and storage. And again, that'll be different based on the size of business that you run. We have a unit that we keep things in, we have storage space. It might just be that you keep everything in your vehicle on your drive at home and in a shed or whatever, and your costs to do that are much lower than mine, and my costs again will be much lower than some of these big companies that have huge warehousing and retail space. Same with your vehicles. So again, we have a few vehicles in our fleet. There's costs associated to them to do with servicing, MOTs if you need them, the leases, basic maintenance that goes on, tyres and such, wear and tear. There is also insurances that go along with that if you need to pay for any parking at your workplace. You know, there's lots of different factors that can result in a figure being apportioned to that. And again, based on the size of your company, it will vary massively. Your phone, comms and IT. Again, that's your mobile phone contracts, telephones at your business unit, IT support that you might need if you've got any servers and things that are running. There are costs associated with that as well. And again, they'll vary massively if it's one person running off a handheld mobile and an iPad to a company with a fleet of guys, a load of office staff, and all the costs that come alongside that. You've then got your insurances, and that's the basics, like so insurances to do your job. So product liability, professional indemnity, your employer's liability insurance. There could be a specific insurance requirement on projects that you run, so contracts insurance. Kind of the vehicle insurance is covered in that section, but I mean, you could put it in there as well if you want. It's just the cost you would apply to ensuring the safe system to operate your business. And again, it'll vary massively based on your turnover, the number of staff you employ, if you have a work environment that needs insuring. So it will grow and fall based on how you set up your business. Memberships and accreditations. So again, that can vary based on what sector you might be in. I know from speaking with Neil in rail, they have a whole host of other accreditations that they have to pay for every year that you don't have to pay for in normal contracting. But you're basically talking about your NAPITs, your NICs. If you have any health and safety documentation that you need to be produced for you in terms of running your business, we have that. We have contracts that are put in place for us in terms of risk assessment method statements, health and safety, that kind of thing. You then got fuel, and that kind of ties in with the vehicles as well, but I put it in there. There will be a fixed amount of regular fuel that you're going to use in a week to week or month to month basis that aren't specific to jobs that you might be attending. Just the basic running of your fleet. Utilities, the same, so your gas, electric, water bills, any council tax, business rates, whatever you want to call it, the basic costs that come with operating your business space. And again, they'll vary hugely based on the size of the business that you're running. Equipment and tools, that's often something that smaller contracts forget to price in. So the regular replacement of your power tools, we all know these batteries don't last forever. Your drills and drivers will burn out, especially the SDS chasing guns if you work in the domestic sector. And you need to apportion an ongoing fixed cost to that so you can keep your toolage up to date and serviceable for you to use. If you just kind of ignore that and let things build up to the point you need to expend a lot of money to replace it, you're not factoring that into your regular ongoing fixed costs, so don't forget that one. And same with your test instruments and stuff. They only last for so long, and there's a regular cost associated with replacing them. Depending on if you're a one-person business or you've got 10, 20 guys working for you, the costs on that will vary drastically as well. Training and CPD. CPD is the buzzword that lots of people don't like, and I find quite irritating because it's this new thing we've had thrust upon us that we must now be maintaining, all with the cost associated with it. It's just keeping up to date, I guess, with training. So if you need to do wiring regs updates, if you're developing the services you offer as a business and you want to get into solar or battery storage or whatever it may be, work in rail environment, get into DNO level distribution, there is other courses you can do to not just maintain the services you offer, but build on them as well. So getting them into your regular fixed costs as an annual kind of budget is a sensible thing to do. Got software on there. And again, for everyone that'll be different. For some people, it might just be your testing inspection software, your accounting software. And for others, you might have CRM, so your client management tools. You could even have telephone answering systems. And there's loads of levels you can take this to based on the size of your business and the costs associated with that rise and fall based on that scale. I think you can see where I'm going with this, that a small individual business person is going to have a much lower cost base than some of these larger companies. And we'll get to how that might affect things later on. Accounts as well, and again, you might have to employ internal staff to look after your accounts. You may have to pay to outsource that to a local accountancy firm. You may have to do both, but there is a cost associated with that. Same for your legals. Companies are going to need the employment of solicitors at some stage for contracts of employment or trading terms and conditions, whatever you might call it. There will be a regular cost on that. Your workwear, basics, providing yourself with PPE that you might need and branded uniform if you want, or whatever else for yourself or for your staff, there's a cost with that. Your advertising and marketing, something that shouldn't be forgotten, even if that's your time spent doing it, you must remember to factor that in as a fixed cost. It's not all right saying you're going to advertise and market your business, but if you're spending a day a week doing that, there is a regular ongoing cost factored in with all of this that you need to get in there. Debt costs. Those accountants will type that into different categories, but if you're an established business and you've maybe taken out debt to buy fleet or to buy a commercial space to operate out of, or to set up in the outset with all your test instrument tools, where a lot of these things where you pay for it up front to get yourself running, you may have debt costs associated with that and the interest payments that become due as a result of that, so factor that into your fixed costs as well. And there'll be other things that I've missed from this. I've just popped that together in literally 5 minutes off the top of my head, so don't hold the gun to my head. It's basically just setting out what some of your fixed costs might be, and then obviously you need to add up what all that is, and then if we're going to base this on a a job by job basis, a week by week, month by month, year by year, whatever it is, divide it by the appropriate amount, 12 months, 52 weeks, and come to your figure, whatever that may be. We'll say in this example, per month. So this will come out at a figure that it costs per month to operate your business. And that you would use in determining the level of revenue you need to make on the jobs that you're pricing yourself out at. So job costs, this other category here, these are kind of one-off hits that you will take in fulfilling a job. And I've got materials on there, extra travel and accommodation outside your fixed costs. So if you're working out of your local area and you need to pay for hotels and there's extra fuel that might be outside of this fixed cost element here, to make sure you factor that in. Your parking, and then the most important one, the time. So the time you're going to spend doing that job. If it's a week, a month, a year, whatever you're apportioning to it, you need to know how long it's going to take. And then the other section, I've got that dirty word profit. We'll get back to that in a minute. Contingency, which is basically if things don't run to plan. You know, if it's a small changing of a consumer unit, you can be pretty confident it's going to take you a day. There may be the odd snag here and there that throws a spanner in the works. And you might want to allow a little bit of contingency across a number of jobs to cover against that. But really, if you're tying yourself to something that's going to take you several weeks, there could be a slip in time and you might want to allocate a contingency based on that. There might be an issue with the supply of materials. So it's just to remember to factor in a bit of pricing as a contingency budget, because if you don't do that, at some stage you'll get caught out on one job. So it's not apportioning that contingency all at once, it's building it up over several weeks, months, years and jobs. So you've got that pool of money there, so for when what hits the fan, it's not going to be terminal for you. And then risk, and that's often something that gets overlooked by lots of people, and I used to overlook this all the time. You learn this through experience, but there is always risk in every transaction you make in business, be it as a supply or a purchase. We'll focus on the supply side of this in this example. So you could have a risk that a contractor might go out of business and not be able to pay you. So it's making sure you're factoring that into your ongoing pricing. It could be the payment terms that you agree to and the risk that you're taking into your business because of that, to do with cash flow. And warranties, so callbacks. If you're supplying materials, you have to obviously cover the labour on replacing them sometimes. And if there's a risk factor in that, you need to make sure you're pricing it in to the jobs that you're covering. And you'll learn that through experience, that a certain number of LED light fittings, for example, will fail within the warranty period and the manufacturer will cover XYZ amount of cost, and you're going to have to cover the rest as part of that initial sales offering to your client. Factor in that risk is the best tip I can give you. And yeah, it's just to really set that out there. Obviously, once you've come to this kind of fixed cost aspect and you've got your job costs, and then it's setting what you need to present as a rate, I guess, to cover it. And when you're pricing up your jobs, obviously you're going to have your materials with their markup into them. You're going to know what your travel and accommodation costs are and your parking costs. And then the time, so what you set as your labour rate, needs to cover all of these things and these things here. That's where you're generating your money from. So you need to set what your profit figure is. If you want to make 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% profit, whatever it is, if you can market yourself in that way to demand that level of profit after you've paid all your wages, including your own, that needs to be factored in as well. And your contingency for your bad and risk for your bad debts and such, make sure that's factored in on a regular basis. And you can see where this would be very different from a one-person company. So their costs on these are all going to be tiny. The level of risk they might be taking on would be much smaller because it's generally local small works contracting. Your warranties are much simpler and easier to manage because you're installing less materials overall, and your profit demands might be lower than a more established company, what they would need to take in to please, say, shareholders and other investors in that business who are going to want to see a return on their money. So when you see some small new companies entering the market and you see them charging out at 30 quid an hour or whatever, and you might think as a more established contractor that's just crazy, how can they survive doing that? Well, it depends on this equation, doesn't it? And the fact that is so different for everyone. That's really what I'm trying to show in this demonstration, that there is no real, you need to be making £100 a day, £200 a day, 300, 400, 500. it really does depend. We have a set figure in our business that we need to make every day from the activities that we get up to, out installing stuff, and everyone contributes to that, be it people working on the sales pipeline, working on looking after customer service, doing the accounts, out doing the physical graft on site, and we have to generate a certain amount of money to cover all of those costs and return some profit to the business, hopefully. And yeah, it's just what it is. Much bigger companies will have a higher cost than we do, and that's why you'll see sometimes, I don't want to mention the name of the company because it's not fair, but there's a big company, and you will see they've given a price at a domestic level for a rewire. This is often the figures that get people talking the most, and it might be £10,000 or whatever for a rewire. But that is because they're factoring in a much higher cost base on all of this. They have a much higher profit requirement, and they may be taking on more issues with bad debt and risk in the work that they're delivering for customers and the contingency costs around that. Whereas a smaller contractor might go and quote that job and it'd be 5 or 6 grand because their overheads around all of it are not the same. And both could be delivering an equally good service, both could be delivering an equally bad service. It's just to really kind of set that out. And there's people who've shared posts on social media where they've said they need to make £600 to £800 a day to cover their business costs, and other people are like, wow, you're obviously ripping your customers off charging that. And when you actually drill down into it and the costs that they might have, they're not really. And another contractor can turn around and say, well, I need £300 a day because they're working out their car with a boot of tools and the minimum amount of insurance possible to go to somebody's house and do a job. And they're paying no regard to any of these things because it's not something they're factoring into their pricing. The profit isn't really something that they think about as profit. They're just looking for the wages to live as a self-employed contractor. I guess there's no right or wrong to it. Just things to consider. If you are looking at setting up your own business, based on where you see yourself fitting in that, if you want to build up to this big company with loads of people working for you and running around doing work in solar or battery storage or whatever else, your fixed cost base is going to be higher, your job costs are going to be higher, and potentially your profits will be higher as well. Or if you're going to go around looking at small works and just sorting out swapping people's lights that have gone faulty, replacement consumer units or whatever else, your fixed costs will be much lower if you're not employing anybody other than yourself, and you're just working out with a van and you don't need any storage or office costs or marketing costs because that phone just keeps ringing. You're not too worried about any of this. Your day rate will be much lower, and that's all fine. And a lot of it you learn through experience, and what we want to do at varying times in our careers changes. It's changed for me. I've been at various places in my business life where I've had aspirations to grow a massive corporation, and others where I've thought, nah, that's not for me. I'm just going to go back to working for myself, making as much money as I can, expending the least amount of energy as possible to do that, to have the lifestyle that I want. And there's no right or wrong in any of that, I don't think. Those people sometimes who you see preaching on social media because they've built up a following, and I'm aware that I'm part of that as well. I wouldn't call it a problem, it's just one of the things that happens. You need to remember that they're not successful business people because they've got big followings on social media. They're successful because they have worked social media very well. And some of the best advice you might want to listen to and take on board isn't necessarily the biggest profiles you will find knocking around on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, or wherever else. It's different. And if people are trying to position themselves as those experts and ask you for money for teaching you how to be like them, that's sometimes a red flag to watch out for, in my opinion. So just keep an eye out, choose your sources wisely, and if you have any questions for me around the things I've done now in over 20 years working in the electrical industry, get in touch. I'm always happy to offer any pearls of wisdom or bad experiences of my own that might help you. And ultimately just to have the confidence and belief in yourself to just start doing stuff. If you want to go off and work on your own and you've got that in you, just get going and pick it up as you go. Learn from your mistakes, learn them fast, and know your worth as well. And your worth will be different at different stages in your career. I certainly charge a lot more per hour now than I did when I first started, and that's just the nature of what happens in business. I think if you speak to anyone who's been doing this for a while, they'll stay the same. You come in keen and fresh, you need to build up that reputation and workflow, and over time you establish that reputation and repeat business, word of mouth recommendation, and all of a sudden you realise your value has increased. It's just what happens. So I hope you found that interesting. If you've got any questions, drop them in below. Sorry if it's a bit of a boring video, but it is one I've had requests for, which is why I've put it together. I've been asked to do this for a long time, and I've avoided it because it's a hot potato of a subject that often triggers people, and there'll be people sat there now shaking their heads in total disagreement and others in full agreement, and that's just the way it is, isn't it? There's no right or wrong to these things. Thank you for watching. Give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If you haven't, please subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you all on the next one.